Hello and welcome to Best for Women Live. I'm really excited about today's conversation, which is tackling head on the business challenge of selling in our current environment. It is real, it is tangible. If you are in business development in any role, whether as a manager or as someone who is involved as a business owner, then you are feeling this sort of pinch or shift or change. And today, our expert, Chris O'Shea, is coming to have this very conversation with us. So, Chris, I'm going to add you in now, and we'll see if the... But I'm really excited to have Chris join me on the show today. We've known each other for quite a few years now, primarily in the capacity of his role as Senior Advisor of Business Development. Amazing. We just need to get your camera. There you
I
are.
know, I know. It's typical me. I just show up with the wrong camera. It is what it is.
And it is all good. I am so glad that you're here. I'm so glad you could join
I
us.
am very glad to be here myself. This is amazing.
Now, we're going to dig deep into this topic because I think it's so valuable and so important. But before we do that, I want to tell our audience one of the things, if you have been missing out, if you have not tuned into Walking with Rosie, because it is so much fun. So, Chris on LinkedIn, I don't even know what schedule you have, sort of not daily,
I
but like,
am a hot mess, Brooke. I'm
I
a hot
know
mess when it
it's
comes to
great.
scheduling, but so it's a really funny story. So I've been thinking about building content forever, and so I kind of got a couple of nudges from a couple of people who said, "Yeah, you should do this." I'm like, "Fine, that's amazing." Yeah, when am I going to do that? And so the typical time that I have actual time is when I'm walking my dog, and that's when I did it. So between Ruby and myself, we just go and whatever meanderings come out of my mouth that she has to listen to because she has no choice, this is what happens.
Oh,
So here we are.
and then you post it to LinkedIn.
And then I post it. Exactly.
And I will tell you, listeners, it is all gold gem nuggets the whole time. So, but it is, you've got rustling leaves. It's a very
Oh,
calming
the
environment to listen to it.
whole 9 yards.
Oh yeah. But it's a difficult conversation because it's awkward and it's uncomfortable. And so being out in nature, having Ruby, it's Ruby, right?
Ruby, yep, yep,
Having Ruby
yep.
there, every so often you get to see a little bum wiggle. Like it's great. It's
It's
just,
the best thing for me because it's physical activity that I need. So it's working out on all levels. I'll say that.
I love it. So Chris, do you mind taking a few moments with this great lead in and follow up,
Sure.
to introduce yourself?
Yeah, happy to. I won't take too long. So Chris O'Shea, I am what's known as a senior business advisor with the Business Development Bank of Canada. That's my day job, and so I'm working with clients from coast to coast. I'm based on the East Coast in Halifax. I've been doing this for about 11 years now, hard to believe, but I have dealt with all manner and line of business. Every vertical, if you name a vertical, I've probably touched it at some point in the last 11 years, but it's extremely rewarding to work with entrepreneurs across this country, help them understand what's going on in the market, help them navigate some of the stuff we're probably going to talk about today, because everybody's facing it. COVID was kind of the canary in the coal mine for a lot of companies, to be quite honest, so it's been a huge shift, but I've been doing this for a long time. I'm trying to translate that into content that other people can take in and just listen to and maybe learn a couple of things that I'm learning. I'm a learner as much as anybody else, so I don't have it all figured out, but it's trying to help whenever and wherever I can. And if women entrepreneurs can get something out of this, I am 1,000% for it.
Oh, I love that. So this is important to me because we talk about how Best for Women is really about the women in our network and our
Yep.
allies. And that's a great example of what that can look like.
Yeah.
You're joining us today from Unfussy Wine.
Yeah, so that's a whole different conversation, but here we go. So Unfussy Wine is the account that I built when my wife and I, way back when, before we had our little guy, we are onophiles. We like a nice glass of wine every once in a while, and so the key that we wanted to tap into was that it can be expensive. It can be an expensive little habit to have, and so we always try to find those little nuggets, those little bottles of wine that you go to the LCBO or the NSLC here in Halifax and you find something that doesn't cost $1,000 a bottle but tastes like one. And so we did. There was a whole period of our lives where we spent a ton of time reviewing and rating wines, not nearly as much now, but it kind of stuck, and so it's been a nice little sort of side project to have.
I love that. I love that. I had a food blog. That's how I got
Well, there
stumbled
you
into
go.
all of this. Yep, I
You've
get it.
lived it.
I
Yep.
have. It's the testing of the Thanksgiving turkey that actually
Oh my
did
God.
it. right? And you're like, okay, well, let's just
Absolutely.
write down. This was good. We should write down what we
That's
did. And then we go to do it again. It's like, what did we do last time? It's like, hang on, I
that's
got it written down.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah, totally
Totally
get
get
that.
it.
Totally
Amazing.
get it. Awesome. Okay, so all that introduction, we're
Yep.
here to talk about how hard it is right now to sell in the current
Yeah.
environment.
Yep.
And it looks like two things. It's both closing the sale, which is almost not at the end, but like, key
Yep.
milestone. And
Yep.
then, but it goes all the way back
Mm-hmm.
to, we call it leads. You talked about verticals. I actually
Mm-hmm.
want to pause there. What is a
Yeah.
vertical? Can you explain that?
Yeah, great question. So, from my perspective, every industry has sort of things within that industry that are sort of recurring themes. So, I would tend to call those verticals. And so, if you are in the let's call it the fashion business, I'm just making up stuff here, but like if you're in the fashion business, you might be in the footwear vertical. So that we make footwear, or we make handbags, or we make something else that might be related to what you're doing. And so they are relatable within the industry of, say, fashion or product, but they are unique in their own self, in the sense of like you are not necessarily competing with every other vertical. You're competing with Nike or Reebok or whatever, I'm making it up. But like this becomes a bit of the thing that I want a lot of my clients to think about as they're trying to define what success looks like for them. So
Oh,
if they understand more about their vertical, they have a much tighter alignment to what success could or should be. Because again, I don't know about you, Brooke, we have lots of companies, lots of businesses, lots of entrepreneurs that want to go on the hockey stick. They want to grow like that. Amazing. Nothing wrong with that. Except when we start looking at their markets and their verticals and they're going like this, we're like, that's a little harder to do. But the more you know in that environment. So that becomes a piece of the puzzle. So a vertical becomes really a key piece of data to lean into a little bit from my perspective.
okay. We're going to dig into that. What is the difference between then a vertical and a niche?
Now you're talking. Okay, so in my world, so a vertical would be, let's go, I'm just going to keep beating up on the
Sure.
footwear thing just because
Yep.
it's easy. So if I'm in the footwear vertical, I might go into, so let's, a lovely example, Tom's shoes. So a niche within that might be a societal or a growth business that has a little bit of giving back to it, where it's not just about the footwear, it's about the positioning of, we are, buy one, give one, like that kind of a model. So that would, in my opinion, that's a little bit more of the niche that would live within a larger vertical, like, footwear. So that might be that's maybe a poor example, but that's kind of how I would start to see subdivisions within that larger industry that we want to cut into.
Okay, I love that. So I'm thinking of a friend of mine, Peter, who runs a store,
Yep.
footwear store,
Hmm.
local to me. So Dundas, Ontario. Shout out
Okay.
to Hang Ten.
Nice.
And is it 10 toes or Hang Ten? I need to look that up. I will put it in the chat. But what I love is their area of specificity
Hmm.
is they only carry shoes and shoe related, like socks and things related,
Yep.
for people who are runners and walkers.
Gotcha.
That's it, right?
Totally
There's
fair.
no basketball shoes in
I
their
get it.
store
Yep.
because they
That's
don't
and
do
so that
basketball.
That's awesome. So that to me speaks to the idea of making sure that you can specialize enough that your ideal client can really latch on to that discussion. And I think that is a very powerful thing, as long as we know who we're selling to. And I think that's an important conversation that not enough people are spending enough time on, which is who are these buyers that want to come in and not buy basketball?
Yeah.
Like that's a very specific person, right? Like that's something that you want to know what makes that group of individuals tick and why would they be drawn into that. And specifically from a local perspective, and I love this for local businesses, is to dig into the whys. Like, why us? Like, in a world of Costco's and Walmart's and everything else that's out there, why would somebody choose us other than the philanthropy of being a local business supporter, right? Like that's not enough. That's good, but that's not enough. That's not scale.
Okay.
So that's interesting.
Okay. So I have looked it up. We've
Aha!
got, all you can see is my ring, but we've got
I get it. I
10
get it.
toe in shoe shop. And what I love
There you
is the
go.
little tagline in the middle. So they've got a picture of
Yep.
toes, right? It's the 10 toe. So you
Of
know
course.
that it's related to feet, and
Of
it's
course.
stroll, walk, run,
Nice.
right?
Love it.
It is
Love it.
nice. Well done, Pete and Paula.
Yeah,
So, okay, so let's go back to your things that
sure.
we wanted to talk about. Leads. Why is it
Yeah.
so hard? Now, okay, we framed it. Why is it so hard
Yep.
to get leads?
Yep. Well, I mean, a lot of things have changed in the last 5 years, and I think, oh, let me let me rephrase that. A lot of things have changed in the last decade, and in my opinion, there's quite a bit of lag in the system that a lot of
Mm.
companies haven't felt enough pain. Even if COVID wasn't enough pain for you, there's more to come, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news with that for companies that are not willing to evolve and change what they're doing, to be very frank. So my sort of hot take on that is that, what used to be lead generation, which was potentially things like cold outreach, trade shows, these are becoming highly diminishing returns for sales teams, salespeople, entrepreneurs, irrespective of industry, irrespective of vertical, back to our discussion of verticals. It is challenging simply because buyer behavior is changing. So there's two things that are happening. So the first one is that we are aging down quickly in terms of buyers.
Mm.
So depending on the source of your information, I've heard it from multiple different sources, that anywhere from 50 to 70% of B2B buying decisions are now being made by people who are millennials or younger. So that's a different human being than, a lot of our entrepreneurs may or may not be used to, right? So there's a different approach. Those are digitally native humans. They start anything that they're doing in terms of understanding what you do or why you do it in a digital lens. So they're going to Google and they're searching, or they're going to your website, or they're following you on social, or they're doing a bunch of things that, 5, 7, 10 years ago, a lot of entrepreneurs would either say, man, I'm not really interested in that, or no, that's not really value add. And now the onus is on the buyer to go out and do a lot of that research themselves. So what are the implications from that perspective? So the first implication is, guess what? Nobody wants to take your phone call. So there's that. And that's really hard for a lot of entrepreneurs to hear because they've dialed into
Literally,
that. Oh, yeah,
literally, do not call. You'll get it goes straight to voicemail, and you
100%.
will not get a phone call back. That is
This is it.
way too invasive. Phone
Yep,
calls are for parents.
you got it. Nailed it. 100% correct. So this becomes a bit of a sticking point for a lot of companies because now they've invested a whole lot of infrastructure in dialing for dollars. And when that goes away, like that has real world implications. And so now my statement is we have to start to reverse engineer what processes, what things will work for the buyers that we have going forward, right? There's the way things were, and there's the way things are.
Okay.
And I'm always sort of thinking in terms of the way things are is much more challenging for folks that have a certain go-to-market.
Mm.
This is the way it's worked. This is the way we've always done it. This is the way it's always been. And so changing that is like turning the Titanic from an iceberg, right? Like it's really, really hard. So the way I would approach this in terms of the 2024-2025 model is to really sit down and think about who your buyers are. And so lead generation, in my opinion, again, one guy's opinion here, is dying a screaming death. And when I say lead generation, it's what I would consider to be outbound, outsourced lead generation. So to your point, calls are for mom. They're not for bills. I am one of the few humans left, I think, in Canada that still has a landline. And guess who calls me on the landline?
Mom.
The CRA is coming for
Oh,
me,
yeah.
right? So they're
Yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah.
coming to get me,
All
right?
the
And
time.
then
Yeah.
Microsoft needs to log into my computer
Yep.
and do some
Oh, air
things.
duct
So like,
cleaning. Your air ducts need cleaning. Don't
oh
forget
yeah,
that one. Yeah,
100%,
yep,
absolutely.
yep,
I
yep.
forgot about that one.
Can't forget that one.
So here we are, right? So when I'm sitting at my desk in my now not home office, if I'm at the office, and that phone rings, you nailed it. It's going to voicemail 100% of the time. And so how hard is it for any salesperson to generate interest when you can't get past the gatekeeper? And the gatekeeper could be the assistant, it could be the voicemail, it could be the admin team, it could be a million different things.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the stuff that salespeople are legit dealing with right now. So that's not reason for us to fold our tents and go home. We have other things to do. What does that actually mean? So the statement that I will make to any salesperson that will listen to me is that you need to take this into your own hands, which is this could be entrepreneurs, this could be just generally people in the selling environment. go out and begin to create content. So just like my dog and I go walking, that is not an accident. There's definitely stuff that just has to get out of my head. That is a fact. But in the wider, broader scheme of things, people want to know that you know what you're talking about. They want to build a relationship with you. So people buy from people that they know, like, and trust. That is not up for debate. That is what happens. But how do they come to know, like, and trust you? Does it have to be at a trade show? Does it have to be at the Chamber of Commerce event? Does it have to be through a phone call? None of the above or all of the above. It really depends.
Oh, Chris, we're getting
So,
hearts. We're getting
here we
hearts at
go.
the side.
Hearts.
Yeah.
Love hearts.
Yeah.
Hearts are great. So from my perspective, it just boils down to what is it that sales teams need to think about very specifically in this environment. And so my biggest concern for a lot of salespeople today is that they're just waiting. They're waiting to figure out what the next thing is. What's this ChatGPT thing going to do to me? Like, don't wait. You got to go out and you got to learn. You got to know what this means from the perspective of the market, right? Like, so, we have lots of people who are leaning into AI tools, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's amazing. It's still very early days. Let's be very clear. But like, you want to know what's impacting your buyer. How do they want to be catered to? How do they want to understand what it is that you do? What kind of relationship do they want to build with you? How will they become a know, like, and trust, environment with you? Like, what does that actually look like? And I think a lot of salespeople are not being thoughtful. A lot of entrepreneurs are not being thoughtful enough about that right now. And I think they're just trying to hopefully continue doing what they've always done and expecting different results or better results or outcomes. And that's tough to watch.
It is. So let's pause there because I think there's
Yep.
like three things you said. So for
Yeah.
those of you who are using AI, remember hallucinations are very real.
100%.
A previous guest, Andrea Henry, told me about a case where the judge realized that the research that the defense had been done through AI,
Yeah.
and the AI had created the cases, and they were perfect, and they had
Ay, ay, ay.
citations, and they
Oh,
weren't real.
come
Right.
on.
So yeah. All right. I know it's
I
kind of
get
an
it.
extreme case, but
I
it
get it.
exists. Because it sounds so plausible. And I had someone tell me they used one to make up a board game, and everything line by line made perfect sense. But when you looked at it as a whole, it was unplayable. It wasn't a thing.
I
The
get it.
other thing you talked about is the idea of the entrepreneurs being thoughtful, because I think this
Mm.
is really an important one, because we're going to extend that to just anyone who's in a business development role,
Oh,
whether
yeah.
you're in a leadership role, a doer role,
100%.
independent contributor, an owner. That part's not actually relevant. What your sort of title is, the fact that you're in sales and you're churning, you're doing the
Yep.
thing all the time. And sometimes it's not that you're, in my experience, it's not that they don't know, it's that they either don't know how. They may know what's
Yep.
wrong, they don't know
Yep.
how, which is why we're having this conversation, or they don't have time.
Yeah.
Because they just have two hands, especially
This is it.
solopreneurs. And so you're so busy trying to bring in the money that you don't have time to stop and think about how you're bringing in the money.
So true.
Right.
Yep. And
Really
I think
tricky.
from my perspective, it's really value add to not look at it wholly from your perspective, but to reverse that into the mirror and look at what the customer's impacts are. Like, what are they looking for? And I think this goes back to our discussion around even things like niching into footwear. Like, if you get really, really, really ingrained with what the ideal client or the clients that do the best in terms of working with you, who they are, where they are, what they need to know, how they need to know it. Like, these become very structured ways of changing some of the things that we collectively might be doing as business developers or as salespeople or as entrepreneurs or whatever. And I think that's where the magic lies. This is not about us; it's about them. Like, we just want to be an extension of whatever they're looking for and whatever they need. And we have this conversation about creating demand with a lot of regularity. And creating demand in my world is not building brand specifically. Brand is important. So let's be very clear. So your brand matters, but it's not about necessarily just your brand. It's about how your brand ties back to the pain points, the problems, the challenges that the customer is going to face. Because everybody's in it for themselves. Let's be very clear, right? Like, and that's not a disrespect to anybody. We're just busy humans doing whatever it is we're trying to do to get by.
Chris, it has an acronym.
And
It's a WIFM.
A whiffle.
A WIFM.
Okay.
What's in it for
Yes.
me?
What's in it for me? 100%.
Yeah.
And so that to me that's a really strong starting point for a conversation, because now you can say, hey, we have this great product, service, store, what we serve a very specific market, or we have a broad market, or whatever. That's amazing. What is it that is going to get you in front of the right customer? Like, what does that look like from your perspective? And I think everybody acknowledges that they have an ideal client, but not everybody, to your point, does the work.
Yeah.
Right? Like, who would we best be served by talking to at scale? What does that look like?
I really appreciate how you're structuring this
Hmm.
conversation, because we're talking about capacity and
Mm-hmm.
capability. And so sometimes we just do not have the capacity to think. It is on the to-do list. It's just that
Yeah,
it hasn't made it to the top,
it
which is
hasn't.
very different
Yep.
from capability,
Yep.
which is even realizing there's a problem that you need to address.
Yep.
Right.
And this, to me, the capability thing is the one that's the lag in the system. They don't realize there's a problem until we figure out that nobody wants to have lunch with you. They
Mm.
don't want to take your phone call. They
Mm-hmm.
don't want to go play golf with you. They don't want to do these things. They're polite and they're nice, but everybody's busy, and you are asking them to do something that is a step too far in terms of getting them to move to the next step of whatever your sales process is. And so I think it's just understanding your customer to a point where you can then behave in a way that helps them get whatever they want out of the relationship. So customer centricity, customer experience, it gets thrown around a lot. I think the more the companies out there can really buy into that, the better. The overused example is the empty chair in Jeff Bezos's meetings that represent the customer. That's the over that they it gets beaten up all the time. But frankly, it should, because that's the thing that a lot of companies disregard. If
Mm.
the customer is in the room, what would we do differently?
Yeah.
We do a lot
We
differently.
do a lot differently. So I want to, so in my coaching that I do,
Yep,
oftentimes it's for women who are in leadership. So oftentimes
sure.
it's they're transitioning to take more leadership or to step into a broader role and find their
Sure.
voice. And
Yep,
so we do a lot of work around what their, I'm going to say their personal brand is, but it's not about, yes, it's about how you show up, but it's actually
yep,
not. It's about the things you have to say.
yeah,
And what we do is we go back to, who are you saying it to?
yep,
Like,
yeah,
who are you talking to? Like, you and Ruby are talking to people who are interested in learning more about sales. It's very
yeah,
clear.
yep,
My friends Pete and Paula are talking to people who enjoy walking, running.
yep,
That's it, right? And
yep,
so in this case, one of the tools that I use is, I'm going to draw a complete blank because now you're here, the value proposition
yeah,
canvas, which I
yep.
quite like,
Love
actually.
it.
Okay,
Love it.
so for those of you who don't know, it's by a company called Strategizer. When you read the book, it's complicated. It's complicated, but if you actually just sit down and break apart, you can contact me. There's some
Yep,
great stuff. Chris has got great resources too. And it
100%.
just starts to go through and think about, like, what happens if you stand in your customer.
Yeah.
And what the place that I always come to is think about their anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
What is the anxiousness in the head of your customer that's preventing them from taking the next step? They're never going to tell you,
Yep.
but it's still there, and they're thinking about it, right? Like,
Yep.
I want to order this blanket. Is the blanket and the cover going to be the same size?
Great.
And how do I really
Great questions.
know? Right?
Exactly. Yep.
So what kinds of tools or data, like, how did people start taking the action?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, so bottom line, love value proposition canvas as an activity and exercise to focus our time and attention on the things that customers, the jobs to be done,
Mm-hmm.
and the pains to be avoided, and the gains to be achieved. Like that, I love that as an exercise for anybody. Doesn't matter what you sell, how you sell it, where you sell it. I think it's a fantastic exercise. But the other side of that coin, though, and it's not unrelated in any way, is to map to the things that actually matter from their perspective. And so that's going to be different by human, but there's going to be categorizations that you can do. And that's why the value proposition canvas is so helpful, because you can bucket stuff up a little bit. But at the end of the day, they need to understand what it is that is going to be done or solved by interfacing with you. So to your very smart point, is that blanket the same size as the underlay, or is it like, you got to answer these questions, because these are the things, because the default in when that's not done, the default is price. If it's cheaper, who cares, right? I'll pay less, of course. It's great. I don't care if they're the same size at all. It's $5. It's fine.
Oh, and return
We don't want to
policy.
do that. And return policy. I love it. So we don't want to do that. We have stuff that's worth more than $5. So like, how do we make sure that those things are tightly aligned? And the customer's knowledge and understanding should drive all of that. If they don't know, if you haven't shown them, if you can't guide them, there's a gap. Something's missing. And so I can't buy what I don't understand. Right? So, and this is the problem that a lot of companies really struggle with. And they struggle with it for the right reasons, but for the wrong purpose. They don't want to give away their best stuff. There's always a secret sauce. I can't share that part. I'll be very clear again to anybody that will listen to me. There is no secret sauce. If I want to know how you do, what you do, where you do, when you do, why you do, I can find out. It's just allowing me, if I'm your customer as opposed to potentially your competitor, to let me behind the curtain. Let me know how it works. Let me know what I'm supposed to know. Let me know what I'm supposed to do. Let me know how I'm supposed to pay for this, or how I'm supposed to act, or how I'm supposed to behave, or how I'm supposed to go to market, or how I'm supposed to, what questions should I ask? This is the hardest part. This is the hardest part for a lot of businesses because they're so concerned that somebody else is going to take their customer. Well, if you're good at what you do and you actually help me, odds are, unless the next guy is $50,000 less, I'm going to at least listen. I'm going to be there. And this is the stuff that I want a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people in business to really think differently about. Because if you can really nail down how this human at scale makes a decision and help them with that decision, your odds of being the chosen provider for that decision increase significantly versus, hey, would you like to buy my stuff?
Right. Okay.
Don't do that.
Oh no, please don't do that. Don't do that. Nobody. The answer is no. I don't want to buy your stuff. I don't know who you
No.
are. We had two previous guests. One of them, Natalie Williams, on customer success, and the other
Sure.
one, funny enough, Natalie. Natalie, I'm gonna totally mess up your last name. Sorry, hon. Natalie from Pictonat. They both came on the show. One of them from a project management lens, and the other one from a customer success lens.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, it wasn't about selling; it was about fulfillment. And where they make their sale is in explaining the fulfillment process after you've made the decision.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
And how do you walk them through how to use things like project management principles, which you think, well, what's that got to do with photography?
Right.
Well, it has everything to do because, again, all of the anxiety that people have in coming into this process. Natalie talked about onboarding. What's going to be the process?
Mm-hmm.
What information you're going to do? What are you going to do with it? How are you going to use my information? Who else has access to it? Right? These questions are all but there are questions that your customer will likely never speak up about. But it will be part of the no.
Yep. And that's a really, really, really good point. And I think that to me is the stuff that if everybody just stopped and looked and took stock of everything that you just said, this whole process gets way easier. Now, the difficulty and the challenge with this is that time is against us all because we all have short-term metrics, short-term goals. What are we doing this quarter? What are we doing this month? And some of what we're talking about takes some time. So if you're trying to create demand for your vertical, your category, your business, that, you don't start that on Monday and by Thursday the deals start rolling in. Like, that's not how this works. What you really want to be able to do is start to build out this model that you just very articulately put in terms of, like, what does the buyer actually need to know to make a decision of any kind? Give them that on repeat forever in whatever channel or tool or environment that they spend their time, so that those questions that do go unanswered, that turn into a no, can be answered. Takes all those bricks out of the wall. But you start that on Monday, and by the following Monday of the following quarter, now you start to get a little bit more traction. And now you start seeing things differently. Right?
And the tiniest little bit of momentum.
And momentum. So momentum is everything, right? Like, so it's the time between starting and the momentum that everybody has the problem with.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
That's everybody's patience is very narrow, very thin, right? Which I get.
Yeah. By the way, Natalie Amlani, she's fabulous.
Okay.
In case you don't know.
Perfect.
So we talked a little bit about, and I thought you made such a broad and powerful statement. You talked about how people who are in sales have to change how they're doing things. The golf game, that's a whole afternoon. I don't even have an afternoon for you.
Exactly.
Lunch, Really? Because I don't want to eat out every day because I'm trying to actually be a bit healthier
Even if you're
and
buying.
even if you're buying, it doesn't
Yep.
mean that I want to actually eat out and get that much salt.
Yep.
I don't want to really be taking people out for lunch because I now have a bit of a tighter budget because I'm having a bit of a harder time bringing in new leads, right?
So there's that.
And so it starts on this bit of a not a tailspin necessarily because I don't think we're there, but it's the start of, right, this sort
Yep.
of shifting, shifts to the side. And
Yep.
so how else do salespeople picking up the phone? Trade
Yep.
shows are helpful, but
Yep.
they're table stakes. They're not where you're going to get things. It's just that people expect you to
100%.
be there, so you have to be there,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Totally get it.
Okay,
Yep.
so tell me what else you're seeing in the shift as a sales business development person. What else is
So
shifting?
let's not leave trade shows too quickly here because I think that's something that is important for everybody to think about. And let's be very frank. So, we were all stuck in our houses for 2+ years. And so trade shows are having a bit of a moment right now. And so everybody wants to go to a trade show because, hey, I get to go away from my family, or I'm heading to Vegas, or I'm doing whatever. It's amazing. Let's go. And so this sort of event-based process will have a bit of a shelf life here until we start seeing those data points that come back from these companies that go to these trade shows, and suddenly, surprisingly, no business. Huh? We
Mm.
spent 100K. Everybody had a great time. Where are all these deals that are supposed to be rolling in? And when that doesn't happen, well, that's not exactly the best use of our $100,000. What else can we do? So, not suggesting for any moment that a trade show isn't an appropriate strategy, but I would focus our time and attention a little bit differently, which is to say, hey, we know a lot about our market. We're really smart at what we do. Let's not have a booth. Let's walk the floor. Okay, we just cut our expenses there quite significantly. That's interesting. Let's get our CEO on a panel or a keynote. We'll pay for that gladly because now we're above the masses. We're on a stage somewhere, so people are going to come and listen to our
Mhm.
message in some frame. That's interesting. We're going to have a hospitality suite adjacent to or near the trade show where we can pull people out of the event, bring them to our environment, and have a deeper conversation about whatever it is we're going to talk about. Hand them a coffee, hand them a
A
glass of
little bit
wine,
quieter,
whatever. A
right?
little bit quieter.
Great for people who are
Interesting.
being a bit overwhelmed by the chatter and the volume of people because we've been away from it.
100%. Oh, and give them a place to put their feet up
Oh, yeah,
because
that's a
they've just been walking on concrete for 8 hours,
beautiful. Love that.
whatever. It's taking some of these tools and things that we, have always considered tried and true, air quotes, and using them in a different format. So again, the cost model will matter. The eco footprint, we're all getting on airplanes and flying to Vegas. Well, is that the best use of our time? Maybe, maybe not. But at the end of the day, this is about deals. This is about sales. This is about manufacturing demand for our business. And is that the best use of our time? For 2024, it might be. I have a feeling, and this is just me, that window will close. And if we
Mm.
are not getting hard dollar, hard KPI returned outcomes from some of these events, it's really hard to justify that in the grand scheme of things. So that's one angle. The rest of it in terms of like what do salespeople do? I mean, the idea from a salesperson's perspective is I will do anything that I need to do to get in front of the right people because that's what salespeople do, right? Like that's the right
Tell
approach.
me you're in
Sales is hard.
sales without telling me you're in sales.
There you go. Nailed it. Right there. And this becomes the approach. But what we want to do is be forward looking and forward thinking as opposed to coming back around to what used to work and expecting the same outcome. That's not the right mindset. So from my perspective, for any sales reps that are out there, this is why it's such a simple, silly, but very challenging thing for them to do is to generate content, to do something like this. So you and I are having a lovely conversation. We're talking about the challenges of sales. What if I was, a born and bred salesperson talking about whatever industry or vertical that I'm in, and now we're talking about the pain points of the world. We're giving a state of the union. We're not selling anything. We're just
Nope.
telling what we see. Here's what I see. Here's the
And
world.
I'm going to tell you right now, part of this podcast is showcasing
Yeah,
people in my network, giving them a platform.
sure.
The second part of it is it's a great referral source for me. I have people contact
Absolutely.
me all the time. Hey, do you know? Actually, yeah, I do. And if you aren't sure
Fascinating.
she's the right fit, here, take a listen. It's like 40 minutes, hop on, take a listen, see whether or not she's the one that you, or
I
he's the one
love
that
it.
you want to work
Yep.
with,
Yep.
right? And that's it. Absolutely is for me a way to have a different level of referral for people in
Yep.
my network.
I think that to me is the most um, self-centered important thing that you just said, because this is about how you take what's available to you as opportunity and use it for your own purposes. This is not about you, it's about them, but you're using it for your own purposes. The value add, the information, the value exchange, the conversations, that's where the quote unquote customer wants to get the data. That's what they want. But oh, by the way, you're really smart. You know exactly what you're talking about. These are the things that people will recognize and see as a piece. So again, in any business development role, you want to stand apart. You want to stand apart. If you are the same as everybody else, then you'll be treated the same as everybody else.
Mm.
So this is how you start thinking a little differently about how you take your business into the market. And you say, okay, hey, I could sell you stuff all day. That's easy. The hard part is to sit back and talk about the state of the industry, the state of what's going on, what challenges the customer's facing, a case study about what happened, not even how you fixed it, just what happened. And these become the things that people will start to recognize and say, hey, I recognize that case study. That exact thing happened to me. How did we solve it? Oh, by the way, we can talk about how we solved it. We can talk about it here. We can talk about it offline. But that becomes a model to build. Now, patience. That, that's the hard part, because every rep has a leader breathing down their neck about the next whatever, the next deal, the next proposal, the next whatever. So it's not easy. So no one is stating in any way that it's easy, and the patience matters. But if you get this right, and if you say the right things, and if you have the right approach, and if you have the right message for a market that is willing to listen to that message, woo, holy mackerel, have you got an opportunity at your fingertips? And so the idea of podcasting, so this conversation, scale it up to like, now it's on Apple and Android, whatever, Play stores and all that stuff, like amazing. What is the value of the podcast? The value of the podcast is not the number of subscribers you have. The value of the podcast is the fact that you are doing an information value exchange that somebody can listen to if you distribute that content on the right platforms with the right tools with the right, but it's got to be the right people, the right opportunity, the right. And so this is the stuff. I've been a rep. I know what it's like. What have you done for me lately? Totally get it. You can't just dial for dollars anymore. What is it that you can do that's different, makes you seem smarter, know more, solve the problems virtually of the challenges that you hear every single day on repeat over and over again? This is where the magic starts to happen. It is not easy. It is not short term, but it is very much value add.
Oh, okay. I don't even have to worry about a summary. You just summarize the whole thing. I'm just going to pull the transcript right out of that last few
Done.
minutes. So I want to end on, because you've
Yeah,
talked about data, just a few points. So in our
sure.
last, like we've got 5 minutes left, or
Okay.
2, 3 minutes left. Tell me
Yep.
about where data factors into all
Ooh.
of this, and what is
Yep.
this data,
Yeah.
infamous data?
Great question. So super good question. So bottom line is, we have access to all of this stuff. We have access to all of these tools and technologies and CRMs and Google Analytics and social data, all of it. What do we do with that information? So A, we have to define what's important, what matters in terms of that information. And so if I'm a rep, revenue matters, to be very frank.
Yep.
But the rest of it is, what are the little micro steps that get me to that revenue? And do I know what that looks like? And so whether that lives in a CRM or it lives in I don't really care. If it lives in a spreadsheet, that's fine. I hate spreadsheets, but it's fine. The idea is to start looking at what we can optimize. Because if I'm a sales rep, I can only do two things better. I can sell more stuff and I can sell more often. That's pretty much it. So like if I get my average order size up 50%, guess what? I win. If I close 10% more business, I win. If I do both, guess what? I double win. So it's what information, what data, what stuff will help me understand where I'm at with all of that. Now the business wants to know at a macro what that looks like from a growth perspective. But for me as a rep, I want to know how can I get more
Mm-hmm.
information? Like what can I do to be better? And let's be very clear, a lot of reps, especially of a certain vintage, they live on their gut. this is going to close, that's not going to close, I don't even want to talk to that person. And sometimes they're right and sometimes they're very, very, very wrong. And so going with your gut will get you so far. The data will get you to the next level. So it's the balancing act of the two. I will never, ever, ever say no to an entrepreneur's gut, but I will absolutely challenge how they got there and
Mm,
what information they're using to build upon that. Right?
especially when the people who are buying from them are not the same people who used to buy from them. Back to your very first
Oh,
point.
ain't that the truth? Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if they get up in the morning and they look in the mirror and they think they're looking at their best customer, they are in serious trouble. So that is not how this works anymore. So a lot of this will be now reflected upon what does the new, and I say this with all respect, what does the new generation of buyers need? They are different. A 55-year-old VP and a 32-year-old director are two different humans in every foreseeable possible way. You have to know what the difference is.
I love that. That was really powerful.
There you go.
We're at time. This is like flown
Hey,
by. I'm
like
just
a
gonna be. Oh,
breeze.
Chris, will you come back? Because this was super fun.
I'm at your disposal, Brooke,
Amazing,
always.
amazing. Putting
Of
you on the
course.
spot. Like you're not going to
No
say no.
problem.
Yeah, no, you're not going to
No,
say
of
no.
course not.
But
That's
this has
ridiculous.
been really fabulous. So again, hop. I'm going to drop the link in our
Yeah,
show notes. But
cool.
hop onto LinkedIn to come and listen
Yeah.
to like the
Don't come
deep
for me,
dive.
come for Ruby.
Come for
That's
Ruby.
totally,
It is
totally come for Ruby.
the cutest little wiggle when she walks. It's adorable.
She's the
She really
best.
is. She really is. But, and so are you, my friend. I really appreciate you coming
Appreciate it.
to chat.
My
Thank you for sharing
absolute
your
pleasure.
wisdom. You shared so many, I think, really important things that aren't being said enough.
I want the conversation to shift to just how fast things are changing, and that the bottom line is, even if our buyers are changing, humans don't change that fast. They need certain things. Figure out what those things are. The other side of that, you're going to win.
Oh,
100%.
it's just so good. Thank you.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. Thanks
For
so much.
everyone listening, I'm Brooke Gordon. Thank you so much for joining us today on Best for Women Live, and we'll see you again next Monday. Have a great week.
All the
Bye bye.
best. See ya. Bye.